Hi, I am the Space Quest Historian, and welcome to my first ever Q&A video. I said when I reached 2200 subscribers on YouTube, I would do a Q&A video. Not really sure whether anyone would ever be interested in asking me a question and having it answered, but luckily, some of you actually were. So at the current time of recording, my YouTube channel has 2206 subscribers. So thank you so very much for getting me to this milestone. I'm gonna expound upon this a little later, but I know these are just numbers. And it's just, I don't usually look at metrics or anything like that. But I think having these little subscriber milestones is a fun excuse to do like little odd experiments and little, odd stuff here and there. So that's mainly why I've set that goal for myself and why you're now watching this video. And to that point, the next milestone will be 2,500 subscribers. That's a word that I can pronounce if I really concentrate. When I reach 2,500 subscribers, I will play a King's Quest game of my own choosing for a single video, but I will play a King's Quest game. Before we get started with this, let me just say, and this is a pretty cool thing, I think, is that for a long time I've had a community over on Discord, and it was a Patreon-only community. So if you signed up on my Patreon and you gave me $1 or $2 a month or however much you felt like, you would get invited to the SQH Discord channel. Now, since I started that, Discord have enabled something they like to call categories. A fresh and new concept that I think we can all admire. I don't know. Anyway, they've done categories. So now I can have my Patreon group, like the little VIP cool kids room, and I can have a general for all the uncool kids. Anyway, point is, the Discord server is now open to the public, and there is a link in le video description down here so that you can join like-minded people and talk games, talk Space Quest, talk whatever you like, as long as it's cool. So anyway, that's the thing. Now, let's get into the whole Q&A thing. And the first question we've got here is, of all the ways Sierra Online thought up to kill us all, which is your favorite and least favorite? Well, I can tell you my least favorite, and that's any death that is, that you're not prepared for or that isn't signaled, just sort of a random death. Like you walk into a room and boom, you're dead. And other times you walk into the room, you're fine. My favorite one has to be probably Space Quest 3. And that's when you fall into the lava on Ortega. Because that was such a left field, absolutely balls out, gory moment. We don't give a fuck. Flesh is melting off his head. He's half submerged, screaming, and eyeballs popping out and all that. And you just go, fuck me, I did not see that coming. Well, I threw myself into a pool of lava, so technically I should have seen that coming. But I did not anticipate that they would show it so graphically. So that is my favorite, visceral death. Although I have said in the past that my absolute favorite death in all of the Space Quest series, and of course it being Space Quest, it is also my favorite death in any game whatsoever, would be the giant mushroom heads in Space Quest 2. When you just walk into the screen and you walk under the mushroom and it just eats you up and has a big smile on its face, and you get this lengthy description of how it slowly digests you, and there's some psychotropic elements in its digestive fluid, and you see colors, and everything is just very weird. It is my favorite death because it just revels in the process of dying, and that's a beautiful piece of writing, and it has stuck with me since I was a child, and it is great. So thank you for asking that question. My friend Joe asks, why did you chop off your luxurious Viking hair? And then my friend Rizulka added, seconded. So apparently some people are into long hair, but long hair just it sort of gets in your way. It, when you're trying to carry something outside, wind blowing, there's a lot of wind blowing where I live. The hair just sort of gets stuck in your mouth and it's just beating you every which way. And I did not much care for that. So for the longest time, I had very long hair. Back at university, I was playing in, punk and metal bands, and it was sort of if you're gonna throw your head around while playing drums on stage, it looks a little more impressive if there's a big mane of hair just sort of careening around. But at some point, it just dawned on me that it gets a bit messy and it gets a bit irritating when you're not in a musical situation. And Lord knows, I have not been in a live performing situation in quite a while. So it got cut a bit short. Right now, it's getting a little mullety. I'm not really a big fan of that, so it is probably time for it to get trimmed again. So sorry, long hair enthusiasts. I'm done with long hair. My friend Robert asks, have you ever considered a Roger Wilco cosplay? No, I have not. I have all the respect in the world for people who cosplay, who put time and effort into doing costumes and show up at conventions, and really, just the amount of effort that goes into it, and, staying in character and all of that. I find it impressive. It's just not something for me. I think I draw enough attention with my mutant height. I don't think I need to, dress up for any of that. And also, I just don't have the energy to put something like that together. And also, it would terribly embarrass whoever I was with. So I don't really want to do that either. But again, much respect and love to anyone who puts the time and effort into doing something like that. The Emoji Assassin asks, if there were any emojis you wanted to get rid of, which ones would you pick? I don't know. I do tend to use emojis when I write. I mean, back in my day, we used to call them smileys, and it was just text. I would just do a semicolon and a parentheses, and that was really it. And I like to end a lot of my sentences with smileys or emojis, just because it's hard to convey sarcasm in text. So I like to use emojis and smileys just to make it clear that I'm kidding, or it's meant with a wink and a smile and stuff like that. But as far as emojis I want to get rid of, yeah, they're all fine, I guess. I mean, there are a bunch of them I wouldn't use, but fuck it. No, I'm cool with all of them. Emojis, okay. Except for the animated ones that show up in movies. The movie emojis, what a fucking stupid idea that was. Come on. A movie about emojis. Now, Horace has asked a bunch of questions. Will there be a hole in time-space continuum at 2,500 subs? Fuck, I hope not. I think Doc Brown would be very upset with me if there did. Is this counts as anything? Or does this count as anything? I don't know. I guess that's up to you. You do you. Will you play classic King's Quest or a fan remake? I promise it will be a true King's Quest game released by Sierra Online that I will play at 2,500 subs. It will not be a fan remake. It will not be a fan game. It will be a real King's Quest game. Why did you say that you hate King's Quest but you will play it for subs? That is a very good question, and I think I sort of answered that at the start of the video. I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm holding my subscriber count for ransom or something like that. The only reason I even am able to keep up with my subscriber count is that every time I log into YouTube, that's what it shows me. It pops up this list of what channel would you like to log into, and it just says the subscriber count right there on the screen. So I keep track of how many subscribers I have. I rarely, if ever, check my analytics. If I do, it's just really more for kicks than anything else. I do this content because I think it's fun. And the fact that people are jumping onto it, hey, I love it. It's great. You guys are wonderful and special and fun, and I love you to bits. The truth is, I'd probably do this if none of you were there. I'd probably do less of it, but I would still be doing it. I hate King's Quest. There's another question coming up where I will explain that a bit more, but play it for subs. I do that because it's fun. It's a fun way to mark a milestone that really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really mean anything. That's kind of... I don't want you to get the wrong impression about the whole subscriber thing. but it is more of an excuse for me to do stupid shit, like play a game that I really dislike. Do you believe in astrology? No. Can you lend me $10 to buy Thimbleweed Park? And he follows this up with a tweet that says, I bought Thimbleweed Park, so please skip this question. So, okay, cool. Otherwise, the answer would also have been a no. Tika Nja, but I call him Tika. He's in the stream chats a lot. Asks, if you were to be teleported into a game and had to spend the rest of your life in that world, what game would you pick? Now, there are some immediate answers that come to mind, and those are merely because I am so fascinated with the game world that I would want to, spend my time exploring them and just be able to walk around in them. And those would be games like Beneath the Steel Sky, because I'm really just fascinated with the world that they built. However, upon further reflection, actually living in Union City in Beneath the Steel Sky would suck a lot. Because then you'd be brainwashed by this omnipresent computer that has turned everyone insane, and it just wouldn't be it would be a fun vacation for, I don't know, a couple of hours maybe, but I would really like a teleporter to just now beam me up, take me back to where I came from. So if I were to get teleported into a game and have to spend the rest of my life in that world, I don't know. The only thing that really springs to mind, like off the top of my head, would be something like the world in Inherit the Earth. Not because I find it particularly fascinating, and I wouldn't be able to survive more than 10 minutes in that world because I'm no good with farming or crafting or anything with my hands, really. But it just seems like a nice place where people are most of the time nice to each other. And of course, I could, to exist in that world, I would also have to transform into, an animal representation of myself. I would be a morph. And if not, and I came back as a human, they would worship me as a god. So really, maybe that's an answer. I don't know. Most of the games that I enjoy, most of the worlds that I tend to enjoy in fiction are not very nice places to live. Like a world like Observer, for instance, that whole cyberpunk aesthetic looks really cool as well. Wouldn't want to live there, necessarily. I don't know. Maybe Leisure Suit Larry 6, the spa. Even though I'd be pretty low on the rung, there's a pool. I could deal with a swim, and the weather seems nice. I don't know. Something nice. Cosmic Lagomorph asks, are you really a biologist? I think I covered this at one point. It's a Futurama reference whenever I say that I'm a whale biologist. No, I am not a biologist. That's a Futurama reference. Although this question may have been asked sarcastically. I don't really know. Merlin asks, hi, you're the SQ historian. It's not really a question, but yes, that I am. What hobbies do you enjoy outside of gaming, such as, do you keep a rickety cabin out in the woods? Avid collector of porcelain dolls? Go to the zoo often and just stare at the orangutans for hours? No, and no, although that last one actually sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. I could actually, conceivably do that. Rickety cabin in the woods? I'm no good in the wild. Really, I'm not. So rickety cabin, although I like cabin in the woods movies, like I said with the previous question, it's not somewhere I'd actually like to be. It's just, something I find fascinating. My hobbies outside of gaming are mostly music related. I have a pretty, I wouldn't say impressive, it's not. And it's not an overwhelmingly sized one, but I have what I think is a decent sized record collection. And I love vinyl records to bits. Here, let me show you. So, here is my vinyl collection. Apologies for the crappy mobile phone quality here. I didn't want to drag my camera down into the living room, but anyway, there it is in all its glory. There are everything from hardcore metal stuff and thing that won't open. There you go. I'm supposed to turn the key the right way. And this latch opens. I had to put them in this glass cage because this little bastard won't stop scratching at them, will you? No, you won't, you little shit. So I've got a couple of things in here, like my Nine Inch Nails' Downward Spiral. Someone has definitely taken a spiral to that thing. And got some Ladytrons here and some Devin Townsend albums. I'm really happy about those. I think Epic Cloud here, yep, that has his signature on it and everything. My Dillinger Escape Plan collection. I even have that thing they did with Mike Patton on a very deceptive vinyl. It says that you're supposed to play it at 45 RPMs. You're not. You're supposed to play it at 33 RPMs. And then I have all this sort of weird shit down here that I've stolen off friends or gotten, you know, just as a like a hate present or just a joke present or whatever, and a bunch of other cool shit. So this is my thing. I love my vinyl records, and sadly so does he. Because he is a bad little kitty, isn't he? Yes, he is. Downward Spiral. This is an original Downward Spiral, you little fuck. And I have this thing to play it on. Right now there's, what is that? That's Carole King. I was gonna say I don't know what Carole King is doing on my turntable, but we were listening to it. We both were kind of tired and had a headache and needed something to listen to while we were eating our dinner. So Carole King is on my turntable. Don't ask me why. It's an old Iowa thing. My dad got me this. It's a direct drive turntable. I love it to bits, and if someone tries to mess with it, I've got Tyto the giant ape here to sort them out. There's a little switch down here. There you go. Tyto, the beast of the vinyls. And down here we've got a NAD, which is an X, and that was a kitty tail. Got a NAD amplifier. This is all blurry as shit because the camera can't focus in this light. And neither can I. And that's a CD player for, you know, if someone brings over a CD. I do have a couple of CDs in the rack over there, but they're more for curious purposes than anything. That is my guilty pleasure, I would say, except I don't feel particularly guilty about it. I love vinyl records. I love listening to music, and I love collecting vinyl records. I love how they look on the shelf. So, yeah, that's my thing. My fetish, if you will. Nah, it's just my thing. Yeah. Other than that, I like playing music. I like composing music. I'm shit at it, but I like doing it. Like I said earlier, I used to be in punk and metal bands from when I was a teenager all the way up through university. I used to play the drums. Hey, hey! Terribly, as you can see. And these days I do most of my composing on the computer. I'm trying to get my... This is a guitar. I'm not good at playing at it, or on it, or at it. It's just playing on it. Like that. The astute observers among you will have noticed that there are only 3 strings on it, and these strings up here are tuned to an open D, so every time you play it, it just makes a power chord, a horribly detuned power chord at that. But with the style of music that I do, it's sort of industrial punk-ish kind of rubbish. You know, you don't really need to tune your guitar that well, or you just make a lot of noise. And you do a lot of throaty whispering or a bit of shouting, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. And also, we watch a lot of movies and TV shows in our household, and we're particularly fond of, you know, horror movies. Every Valentine's Day, we watch Cronenberg's The Fly, because that, to us, is, you know, just a very, very heartwarming and romantic movie, and we love it to bits. Josh, friend of the channel, and friend indeed in real life as well. Question number 1. I know you studied abroad in the US once upon a time. This is true. I was an exchange student in New York. Not the city, the state. From 1997 to 1998. Would you ever reconsider visiting again? Well, I don't have to reconsider, because it's not like I considered it and then went, nah. I would like to go back and visit the United States. Of course, there are a lot of places in the United States I would like to visit. That's the next part of the question. If so, where would you like to go? Well, first of all, it turns out that the place that I was living in when I was an exchange student, is a place called Chittenango in the state of New York. It's near Syracuse. And it turns out that Steven Alexander, one of the co-founders of Infamous Quests, the people who made Quest for Infamy and the Space Quest 2 VGA remake, he actually lives like a stone's throw from there. So all the time I was pissing around in Chittenango in the state of New York, I was actually at a stone's throw away from Steven Alexander. We could have been buddies. We didn't know that each other existed at that time, so there's that. So if I went back, I would love to go back and check out the old haunts and meet up with Steve and just bum around with him for a bit. And of course, going to New York would also mean that I could meet up with Francisco Gonzalez and Dave Gilbert and Robert Menace and the DOS Nostalgic himself, and go out and have a drink and something. Those guys are all in New York, so I would love to just hang out with those guys for a while. I would also very much like to go to California, not because I have a fascination with California, but because I kind of have a standing invitation to bum around with Danny from the Game Grumps. He said if I was ever around, I should ring him up and see if he had time to sort of show me around and shit. So I would really love to do that. That would be fun. Question 2. What YouTubers do you like to watch? I know you watch Jacksepticeye. Oh yeah, I do. He's basically the dude who got me into Let's Playing. I found his videos because I was searching for videos about Gone Home, because I just played that and thought it was amazing, and I wanted to see other YouTubers play it, and I stumbled upon his playthrough of Gone Home, and I've been watching that dude ever since. And I'm presuming the Game Grumps? Interestingly, no. That's really weird, and I've said sorry to Danny on a number of occasions. He's like, fuck it, I don't watch a lot of Let's Players either. So no, I actually don't really watch the Game Grumps. I do watch as much of Jack as I can. But are there any others? Yes, but not a lot of Let's Players. I do watch my friend Iavonix's channel on occasion because she does great job, and she does a great job. Yes, I also know how to speak well, and she has a criminally low subscriber count. So I try to point people in her direction every chance that I get. My friend Blue Screen Jason also does tremendous work. He doesn't seem to be playing games that I'm terribly interested in, but that's not his fault. He did do a playthrough of the first Fatal Frame game very recently, however, and I love that game to bits. Could never play it on my own, so I really loved his playthrough of that. But most of the YouTubers that I watch are guys like Techmoan. And someone in the comments actually recently pointed me to, not recently, maybe a year ago, pointed me to the 8-Bit guy, and that got me into 8-Bit keys, and all this sort of documentary type stuff. Kim Justice is another great YouTuber that I like watching. Lazy Game Reviews, obviously. Pushing Up Roses. These guys do amazing work. Ikifu, my good friend from the YAR community, he does these very short video reviews of adventure games. And it's not the type of content that I do at all. So I quite like watching that. I'm presuming by playing a King's Quest game, you're going to play one of the actual Sierra releases as opposed to the fan games. That I am. But there is always King's Quest 2.5, Breast Intentions, which is a real game. Thank you. I don't want to Google that. Sean Mills of Infamous Quests. Funny how Infamous Quest seems to show up in this video. Have you ever roleplayed as Roger Wilco during sex? I can honestly say no. My friend Datadog, aka Daoosh. Would you rather fight a bear covered in chainsaws, or be the one assigned to cover that bear with chainsaws? And the answer to that is obvious. I would rather be assigned to cover the bear in chainsaws, with chainsaws, whatever. I definitely, because you can strap the bear in. You can muzzle him, you can just tie him to a stake, and then you can attach the chainsaws to him. I suspect, with his bear-like hands, he wouldn't even know how to, rev up a chainsaw, and so you'd have to attach it so that the bear can jump on you and maul you, and then the chainsaws would go like that. Fuck me if I want to fight a bear covered in chainsaws. Also, how do you strategically cover a bear in chainsaws? Hayden B asks, this may have been mentioned in past videos, but when did you first get into Space Quest? Yeah, I actually read this question twice, and I almost got it wrong the second time too. A brief recap of your first encounters of the game would be nice. I've recounted this story a couple of times on podcasts I've been on. My friends at the Squarewaves FM have had me on a couple of times, and Chris Pope of the Space Venture had me on as the first guest on the Guys from Andromeda podcast, and I think I told the story there. But far be it for you to have to go and chase that down. It's very simple. When I was around 7 or 8, my parents took me to this dinner party that they had with their friends, and they would sit around and have dinner and drink wine, and they needed somewhere to stash the kids so they could go be drunken adults thing. And it was a bit young for me to start drinking, so they plopped me in front of what I later learned must have been a 286. Which had, maybe it was an 8086, I don't know. Anyway, it had Space Quest 2 on it. So they just loaded up Space Quest 2 and left me, the kid, at that computer, and all I did was just wander around the outside of Xenon Orbital Station 2. Just wander up and down the walls, and not knowing that if I stepped on that little roundy thing, I would actually get transported and be able to get further into the game. Didn't know that. Didn't speak a whole lot of English at the time either, so the text parser was way beyond me. But I just had fun for hours and hours just walking around that screen, and that's how I got into Space Quest. When I got to my teenage years, must have been around 1994. Yes, I think it was 1994. I bought my first Space Quest collection. Here, let me show you. This happy little thing. Yep, bought that. Mail order, because there weren't really any software stores in Denmark at the time. So I mail ordered this thing, and it's pretty beat up at this point. But I got that, and then I faked a stomach ache or whatever you do as a kid just to get out of school, so I could sit around and play Space Quest 4, the CD-ROM version. And I played it on the disc version before, but I had never heard it with the voices. And I think it is largely because of this collection and the fact that I was able to play all 5 games. There are only the first 5 games on this collection. Being able to play those, that I really got into Space Quest in a big way. And this was round about the same time that the internet sort of happened. And I think we got our first modem in 1995. The first community that I went to look up was, of course, Space Quest, and then I found Jess Morissette's virtual broom closet, and we became friends, and it's all history from there. Sixwing asks, what is the worst purchase you've ever made, and why? I am so glad you asked this question. Hang on. This is by far the worst thing I've ever paid money for in my life. It was expensive. It's the limited edition 2-CD set of Rise of the Robots. What is pretty much universally agreed upon to be the worst fighting game, possibly the worst and most hyped up game to ever come out of any publisher worth its salt. It is an affront to gaming, this game is. Now, I thought Street Fighter was a pretty cool game when I was a teenager. One of my friends had a Super Nintendo. I used to go over to his house every weekend, and we'd play the Super Nintendo, and we'd have LANs and all this shit, having fun playing Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and all of these games. And when I saw this, and I saw the back of it, this is a very, very nice looking box, by the way. Includes music by Brian May. Fucking lie. There are like 3 power chords in the game, sourced from a cassette tape, and that's about it. The rest of the game is in total fucking silence. I bought this pretty much just because the box was so fucking cool looking. It's very glossy, and it was a limited edition 2-CD set. Not only is the game terrible, the game is on the first CD. The second CD, the limited edition director's cut-y thing, the director's cut, is just an insult. Because what it is literally the graphic artist's work folder, just dumped on a CD. No explanation, just in different directories. The test renders, bits, JPEGs of wireframes of rooms and shit. And then there is, just to, add insult to injury, there is a glowing behind-the-scenes recollection by one of the game's producers, I think, who has written like a novel-sized behind the scenes recount of how awesome the game is going to be and how awesome it was, and my god, the hurdles and the trials they went through to get this game in stores. My god, we have succeeded, men. We are going to be so awesome. We're going to take the world by storm. And not only is it just self-congratulatory in the worst way possible, but it's on the CD as PCX graphic files. It's not a text document, it's in graphic file format. Oh my god. So you have like 160 PCX files of text. And I read all of it, and it is awful. This is the worst thing I've ever paid money for. Ebenezer the Weezer asked, that was a weird way of saying that. I've been watching your videos since the beginning of Grumps Boom, and love your work. Thank you. Thank you very much. My question is, if you had to play only one game for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? Tricky question. Because I would get bored of any game if I only had that one game to play for the rest of my life. It could be the most perfect game ever in existence, and I can mention a couple of games that I think are damn near perfect. Space Quest 3 would be one. I love Beneath the Steel Sky to absolute death. Carmageddon is a game that I've been playing since I was a teenager, and I regularly pick it up and play it again. In fact, I've got it on my phone. The phone port, the Android port of Carmageddon is beautiful. It is absolutely, it is just as much fun, if not even slightly more fun, to play in the mobile port, because they fixed a lot of balancing shit and all that. But I would not enjoy Carmageddon as much if it was the only game I was allowed to play for the rest of my life. You know, you get bored of just the same old thing over and over again. So I probably would not like to choose. And also, it seems like a cruel punishment, really. So there's your answer, I think. Alright, Max asks, my question is, what's the deal with KQ, King's Quest? Why do you hate it? Okay, deep breath here. I don't necessarily hate it. Hate is a strong word. I dislike it. I dislike King's Quest, but it's not really King's Quest's fault. It is because of King's Quest's subject matter that I dislike it. Anything fantasy, anything involving heroes and swords and magic and chivalry and save the princess and oh, I'm so handsome and heroic and all of this shit pisses me off. I hate it. I cannot stand it. I've never watched Game of Thrones. I've never read a Lord of the Rings book. I've never been the slightest bit interested in any of that shit. I steer clear away from fantasy and medieval shit. It's not my cup of tea. The only medieval shit I can bear is Blackadder and the Discworld universe. So I don't hate it, and it is... The reason why I pick on King's Quest a lot is because Space Quest, being my favorite game series of all time, it was engineered to be the antithesis of King's Quest. King's Quest has a hero in shining armor, and he's off to save the kingdom. Well, Space Quest has a loser that no one wants to hear from, and he saves the day by just stumbling into the solution. So that's my kind of shit. I like some humorous shit. There's precious little humor to be found in King's Quest, I feel, and when there is, it's not that funny. And I like an anti-hero. Roger Wilco certainly is no hero. And yes, he does turn into one in Space Quests 5 and 6. I think I've covered that. They're not real Space Quests. And it's sci-fi, so it's not dragons and horses and, you know, kings and all this piss. I'm not into it. So it's not really King's Quest's fault, but King's Quest is an easy target to pick on because my favorite game series was specifically created to take the piss out of that series. So there you go. A very good question from a person whose handle I'm not going to try to pronounce. Why is your account name Lively Music? Is Space Quest music that good, or did you start the channel out as something else? The thing in the parentheses there is, if you if you type in youtube.com/SpaceQuestHistorian, you find my channel. But if you start clicking around or follow a link or something, every once in a while, YouTube will default to youtube.com/user/SpensDieMusiek. That's how you pronounce that, by the way. That was actually a short-lived little online record label that I started and thought was going to be a big thing. Like this was gonna be my thing, because all my friends were making music. I was making music. We were playing in bands. We were playing in different bands. But every once in a while, we'd like borrow musicians or gear from each other's bands. So it just became the sort of community of people who were playing in different bands, playing different kind of music, and we would record our music on our own for no budget whatsoever on our home computers. This was back when that was pretty cool. And we'd release our music for free, because fuck the record companies and all this shit. So we were very punk rock spirited, very DIY kind of stuff. And so when I created my first Google account, way back when I was at university, it was called SpensDieMusiek, because that was the thing I thought was going to get really, that was my ticket. Turns out it wasn't. So when I started doing YouTube videos, at first I just didn't, when I started doing videos, I didn't really care, fuck it, it's a YouTube channel, screw it, let's just put this shit up, no one's gonna watch it anyway, and truthfully, no one did. So, eventually, I decided to start doing, Let's Plays, and things started picking up a bit of steam, actually. And then I started thinking, okay, I'm actually uploading all of these videos to the wrong fucking channel. So, rather than close down the channel, open a new one, and basically start from scratch, because I had around 100, 150, 200 subscribers at the point, something like that, was around the time it hit me, wait, that's a really weird URL you got there. Instead of doing that, I went through this complicated process of migrating my channel from my personal Google account to a brand account, which meant that I would get that fancy URL, youtube.com/SpaceQuestHistorian, but I would lose all of the comments that I had written up until that point. And I thought, okay, that's a shitty trade-off, but it's still better than closing down the whole thing, starting up a new thing, and just hoping that those 150, 200 people would just magically find their way into this new channel that I'd created. So that's why it says SpensDieMusiek every so often you click around my channel. And finally, we've got a question from Lucy, who often shows up in the Twitch chat. Very good friend of the channel. I got a question for you. If they made a Space Quest movie, who would you cast as Roger Wilco? Believe it or not, this was a big question back in the mid-90s, the early days of the Space Quest fandom. We would sit around and go, wouldn't it be cool if they made a Space Quest movie? I mean, it is ripe for a movie, even though he spends most of the first game on his own talking to no one. And it would actually be a pretty dull movie. I remember I actually tried to write a screenplay of the Saurian Encounter ones, and I really got stuck. That was the first time I just realized, wait a minute, this dude's on his own for most of this. And then I went, okay, so what about Space Quest 2? No, he's still on his own for most of that as well. How about Space Quest 3? No one to talk to there either. And it just went on and on. It's the first game where you really have like bit players with actual dialogue and shit doesn't come until Space Quest 5. A Space Quest movie would actually not be a very good idea, I feel, at this point. But that didn't stop us from, being teenagers and brainstorming. Wouldn't it be awesome if... And I think the best choice of casting for Roger Wilco actually belongs to Jess Morissette, who suggested Dwight Schultz. You may remember him as Barclay, the nerdy engineer on Star Trek: The Next Generation. He actually looks the part. Although recently, a photo of Patrick Stewart in his captain's uniform from the casting process of Star Trek: The Next Generation, so this must have been like 1987, 1988, a photo of him showed up with a toupee on, because in the first audition, dude's naturally bald, and so someone said, put a rug on this dude, because in the future, everyone will have hair. So they put a rug on him, and he actually does look a bit like Roger. So, but anyway, Dwight Schultz gets it. Dwight looks the part, and he can certainly play the part. So that was it. Those were the questions. Thank you so much for sending the questions in. It's been a lot of fun answering them, even though I do know most of the questions came in from friends who didn't want my Q&A video to, be all sad and empty. But anyway, thank you to those of you who sent in questions who are not immediate in my immediate circle of friends. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Also, thank you for the 2,200 subscribers. Again, at 2,500, I will betray my convictions and play a King's Quest game. Oh, what am I getting myself into? Well, after that poop game, how much worse can it be? Anyway, I hope to see you around the Discord server. Again, there's an invitation link in the description, or as my favorite YouTuber, who is not a Let's Player, says, tech mode, in the video description text box. He's very particular about that. He always says that it's a text box, as opposed to, I don't know, fucking hieroglyphics or something, cave paintings, I don't know. Please like, subscribe, do whatever you kids do. Do leave me a comment, because I do love the comments, as you can plainly tell, so please, fire away. I try to answer as many comments as I can. Luckily, my channel is still at that precarious little size where I'm still able to keep up with all the comments, and I try to reply to as many of them as I can. So please do leave me a comment. I love it. And hey, until next time, I will see you around the don't do it like that. That sounds stupid. I'll see you around the Chrono Stream.